Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, everybody. It is time for Cub Chat Live. you
I'm
know,
excited. We got some spring fundraising going on. We got some great
yes,
Christmas trees here
it is
that we're
time to
looking
put
to.
away the holiday decorations. Anthony, by the way, that's Anthony right over there. He's our co-host for the day, really the star of the show. I'm Aaron, and as Anthony just said, fundraising, the topic of the day today. Anthony, give our viewers kind of an idea of what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, so we've seen this is usually the time of year where people are looking at the rest of their program year, and then they're looking at their PAC checking account, and they're saying, "Wait a minute, we have a delta here. We have a gap of what we'd like to do and how much money we have to do it with."
Mm-hmm.
And so they may be considering doing a spring fundraiser that they've never done before, or they just have always done a spring fundraiser because they've just always done one, and they may not feel like they're being successful with it. So we're going to talk about spring fundraising. We're going to talk about some generic tips about fundraising itself, some 4 major steps or key steps to having a successful fundraiser. And then we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you viewers. What kind of spring fundraising do you do? And I'd love to hear about why you do your spring fundraising. What does that help support?
Awesome.
As we move forward. So put your name in the chat, and don't forget, tag people.
I was just going to say, Erica is doing the Lord's work in the chat. She has tagged a friend of hers that she points out might be interested in these stories. Erica, good job. Everybody else can do that too. Hi, Wendy. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you watching. Steve, Rob, Christina, everybody, we appreciate all you guys watching today. We are the fundraising guys. It's true. It's funny because before we started the show today, Anthony and I doing a little pre-show prep, and he was kind of going over some things you don't want to do. And I went, yeah, did that. I did that. Our first fundraiser. I did that. So I've made some of these mistakes that we're going to talk about, and I learned from them the next year. And surprisingly, things went a lot better. So don't be me. Watch today's show and learn from my mistakes. Anthony's really the pro. He's going to give you some tips. Let's start off. And again, as Anthony said, post your questions, your comments in the comments section. We appreciate that a lot. Mark sounds like he had a good experience at his roundtable. They had a roundtable just recently about fundraising. Excellent, Mark. Good job. And
good.
Way to participate in roundtable also. Very, 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 very useful. Okay, guys, let's start off. Anthony, you said there's a few different things we're going to cover here, a few different points. What's number one?
Yeah, so the key element, the first step I like to talk about when we talk about fundraising is establish the need. So if you do a fall fundraiser, where does that money go and what does it fund, right? And does everyone know where that money goes and what it funds? Most PACs, they do a fall fundraiser and they say, okay, this pays for your scouting, or this pays for advancements and awards, or Pinewood Derby, whatever it might be. So if you're looking to do a spring fundraiser, I would say your critical step, number one, is to say, okay, why do we need to do a fundraiser? Because that's going to be the first thing that parents are going to ask. And they're going to want to know, why are we doing this fundraiser? So some PACs may use that spring fundraising time to raise money for summertime activities. Now, that's something that our PAC did, and we loved. We did an awesome trip every summer. And we would go to, we went to the aquarium one year. We went to a water park another year. We did some fun activities during the summer, and we used the spring fundraising money to pay for those things. And everyone was bought into it. All the parents were bought into where we were going to go, why we were raising the money, how much we were needing to raise. So that's the first key element. Make sure that you're not just doing a fundraiser just to do a fundraiser, because you're going to be spinning your wheels. People aren't going to be bought into it, and it's not going to be successful. So make sure everyone understands, hey, maybe it's we want our own Pinewood Derby track. We are so tired of borrowing PAC 100's Pinewood Derby track. We want our own Pinewood Derby track. Great. That's something that's specific. Everyone can get behind, and then you know what that dollar amount is, and it even helps you as you're out there doing your fundraising to let people know where that money is going to go.
Yep. So right away, When Anthony mentioned this before, I flashed back to my first ever meeting that I led, Cub Scout pack meeting as a Cub master, when I announced that we were going to be doing a fundraiser. And one of the moms said, "Oh, what are we raising the money for?" And I went, "Do what now?" And it, kind of in the transition from the old Cub master to the new Cub master, we decided to do a fundraiser, but never really established how much we wanted to raise, what it was going to be for. And I said, "I'm going to go to Cub Scout stuff." And you won't be surprised to hear, there wasn't a lot of buy-in. So I love the idea of specifically, maybe we, like you said, we wanted to plan a spring trip, a spring outing we're going to pay for. We want our own Pinewood Derby track. That's a great idea to have a real solid, tangible goal like that. I wish I had known then what I know now, Anthony. Totally makes sense, though, when you say it like that.
Right? Or summer day camp or resident camp, right? There's plenty of things that, but again, if no one's bought in, then no one's going to make the effort, and no one's really going to want to do it, right? So I use this as an example. My kids are almost all the way through school now. My son's in college, and I've got a daughter in high school. But throughout those years, can you imagine how many fundraising things we got from school, right? And I was just curious one time, and asking the school, like, what's this really for? Where's and I was surprised to find how little participation rate happens in most school fundraisers, and how little money they actually raise. And so what they do is, instead of having one solid, strong fundraiser, the school was in this cycle of, well, we need to do another fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
So they did another small, poorly run, poor participation fundraiser. So they got in the cycle of almost every other month they were doing some kind of fundraiser for something in the school. And I always felt that it would just make more sense that if you just did one, let all the parents know what it was for. Like, we need new computers in the library. Oh, I can get behind that, right?
Yes.
And now I get it, and now I know how my child's going to benefit from it. I'm willing to participate and make that happen. Where if it's just we're doing a school fundraiser, I'm thinking, well, my property taxes pay for my school, right? I mean, what is it that the school needs that they don't already have, that isn't already being funded, that we need to supplement?
Some Cub Scout parents might be thinking, I already paid my dues already. I'm already a member. Why are you asking for more money? So
it's exactly the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that is a great point. It seems like around this time of the year, Anthony, one thing that folks might be raising money for is a summer day camp experience. That just seems like an option. But you mentioned Pinewood Derby track out. It could be anything that benefits the troop. I want to address kind of a semi-related question, but a comment from one of our viewers, Trevor, who asked, can we discuss ideas for Scouts BSA level fundraising? Trevor, that's coming. I just want to let you know we are currently in the process of discussing a show kind of like this for Scouts BSA leaders and families. Stay tuned, my friend. Okay, Trevor, appreciate your patience.
And I think you're going to find that these things that we're talking about here are very applicable to a Scouts BSA troop or any group that's fundraising. So we're going to cover some things that will help you have a strong foundation, even if you're in a troop or a crew, no matter what scouting program you're in, because just that first step, establish the need, make sure everyone's bought in. Why are we doing this? And that's going to increase your participation rate. And then step two is make sure you establish a goal. So you need a goal for everything, like the big goal for the pack or the troop, and then break it down per scout. What's everyone's fair share of that goal? And making sure that people understand that. And now you've got the buy-in. Always make the goal a little bit higher per scout than what you actually need, because not everyone's going to make their goal, right? And so talk about this on the front end of what's that goal look like? What happens if someone raises more money, someone doesn't raise as much money? What are we going to do if we do a sale and there's a group of us together? Who gets credit for that group sale, if you will? Have all that worked out beforehand. I've seen so much strife and so much drama that happens in Cub Scout packs because those things weren't talked about beforehand. And the worst time to discuss those things is after the fact, right? We sold $1,000 in front of Walmart, and there were 3 kids selling during this 1 hour, but then 5 kids during the second hour, and then 2 kids during the third hour. How are we dividing that up? And then trying to figure that out afterwards. Everyone probably already had their own opinion of what they thought was going to happen. And now you're getting into drama. So having that established on the front end, this is how we're going to run our sale. Now, what works best? Well, that is whatever consensus comes together for your pack families, right? There's no one right answer to that. The right answer is the one that everyone believes is fair and equitable for your group. And so having that conversation on the front end is step 2. Have that goal and have those things worked out beforehand.
That's a really interesting point there, Anthony. And I want to dive into that just real quick. So when you're doing a fundraiser, like you say, out in front of a big store, something like that, let's say you have 5 Cub Scouts there, and we're going to talk a little bit more later about how they should behave, how they should dress, things like that. But even if they all are perfect, there's a good chance that each one of them is not going to sell exactly the same amount of camp cards or whatever it is that you're selling. So your advice, what you're saying is, talk about that beforehand. As long as you establish that rule beforehand, and this is a job for the committee.
Yeah, the committee and parents, right? Whoever's participating, okay. So that's everyone, right? Okay. So I'll give an example, and maybe this will help someone out who is doing this for the first time or isn't happy with the way that things are happening. So we did camp card sales in the spring. A lot of packs do that. That's a council, usually a council-sponsored activity, so you can wear your full uniform. And we had a big storefront that we got access to sell at during the weekends. So this was the way we ran it was this. We stationed ourselves at the exit after they had made their purchases in the store. The manager liked that positioning. Instead of getting people before they spent their dollar with that store, we got them after they've already made their purchases in the store. Mm-hmm. It also helps that they see you as they come in. If they want to grab cash as they're checking out and use that instead, that also makes it a little bit easier on your customer too. Mm-hmm. But we lined our Cub Scouts out in a line. So if we had 5 or 6 kids during that 1 hour block, they formed a line. And when one person came out of the store, the first Cub Scout got to go and approach that person and make the ask. The next person that came out of the store, the second Cub Scout. And after that, they got in the back of the line. We had a rotation. Then we took the average sale, right? We took the sale for that hour, mm-hmm. and then we divided it equally among the scouts that worked that shift, right? Then that way, that was kind of the equitable way to, first of all, make sure that's what we felt was fair. That first of all, it was organized and disciplined. You don't have 5 kids who are trying to get their commission attacking one person who comes out first, and then 4 other people are walking out behind them going, "Woo, I'm glad I'm not that person," right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so everyone gets asked. It's really organized, and for us, it was equitable. So that's an example of we had that conversation on the front end before the day of the sale to talk about, this is how we're going to distribute it. This is how it's going to function.
That seems fair, because some of it is luck. If you get a person who's interested in no fault of the scout, sometimes they're going to get told no. Sometimes they're going to get a sure, absolutely. How much can I spend? And so it does seem fair to divide it evenly like that. You just saw one pack who commented that that's the way they did. Rob says that their Cub Scout resident camp's about 150. So that's a good goal to raise funds for. A lot of other folks commenting and sharing fundraising ideas. I appreciate you very much, guys. A lot of good ideas. Appreciate that. I'm looking at Newville Cub Scout Pack 174 was the one who said that they rotated like that. Very, very cool. Okay. So we've established kind of, do you need a fundraiser? What's your goal? What's the plan for the day? How you're going to divide up the funds that are brought in amongst the scouts that participate that day? Yep. Anthony, what's next?
So the next is understand your product and understand your consumer. Now is not the time to sell Christmas trees. I know that sounds funny and it sounds obvious, but really knowing your market, the community that you're going to be selling in, right? Is it what price point works for that market. I generally like to, we served a wide variety of household incomes. And so we looked for places that we knew that the people that were shopping there were higher wage earners, right? So that if we're selling a high dollar item, we want to be with people who have more disposable income, right? If I'm selling a lower cost item, then it doesn't really matter as much where my location is. But the thing to remember, and again, we're trying to stay away from specifics because there's some great fundraising things that are out there. And I don't want what we say to say, oh, well, this is the best, you got to do it. I just want to make sure people understand that there's a difference between a high dollar item. It's a different type of sale. So if the average price of something that you're trying to sell is, let's say, $30, right? That takes a high relationship. And so you're going to have low volume. A high relationship means you need to establish the higher the relationship is with your consumer, with your customer, the more likely they are going to buy that high dollar item. Now, if you have a low ticket item, let's say a $5 item, well, of course, your commission is going to be a lot less per sale, but that also requires a lower relationship. More people are able to separate themselves with $5, right, than they are 30. And so the lower the price the item that you're selling, the higher volume you have to do. So be smart about where you are selling that. So if this is not a door-to-door situation, if you're selling in front of a store, if you have a low dollar item that requires a low relationship, you need volume. You need as many people as possible that are walking through high traffic, because that's how you're going to make your goal. If you have a high dollar item in a high traffic volume area, you still may be successful, but you have to get the Cub Scouts to understand you're going to get a lot of no's.
Yep.
And that's okay, but you're going to get a lot of no's. So targeting your market to make sure it matches your product is key. So knowing what you're selling and hearing that, oh, we sell this product over here may not be as successful as it is somewhere else because the market just isn't into that.
Right. You mentioned like the more expensive products maybe require a higher level of relationship. An example I could think of would be when you look out and you run into an Eagle Scout, an adult Eagle Scout who comes up and says, I'm an Eagle Scout. They did that kind of thing when they were a kid. They're eager to contribute to the program. Maybe they're not involved right now, but they're eager to contribute. That seems like the more likely relationship where you can maybe have a little more success with a high dollar item. If it's a mom or dad who's in a hurry and they've got their toddler with them, they're like, just take my $5 and give me whatever it is. Right. There's both are fine, but yeah, you're right. One of them requires maybe, one sale every 15 minutes. The other one and you're going to hear a lot of no's. The other one, just requires more. You're going to get more yeses, but of course you're not getting as much bang for your buck. That's fine. I think it's just whatever works best for you. And a lot of it depends on, like you say, where you are, right?
Yeah, I hear a lot of debate over the years about different products and their price points, and this is too expensive, and I can get the same product somewhere else for cheaper. And it's a matter of just knowing your market and knowing your product and knowing who you're really trying to sell to for that product. Again, high dollar item, high return, right? But it also requires a higher relationship. And that's where usually, friends and family more likely are going to buy those high dollar items than the general public.
Yep.
And so you might run into that Eagle Scout that I remember one that came by and he didn't want to buy anything. He just gave Joshua a $100 bill. Right. Mm-hmm. And he freaked out. $100 bill. That was amazing. Right. And that also goes back to our second point, right? Was it, the way that we had that everyone who was there that day for that hour of sales got a part of that $100 credit towards their sale, because that was just like that was luck. right? That wasn't Joshua's skill set.
Yes, right.
Getting that sale.
He hit the right customer, yeah, on the right
Yeah.
day. That's perfect. Yeah. Speaking of that, Rob points out that the way they split theirs up, they split the total for the day by the number of hours worked for each scout. That's a good point.
Right. That's another good way to do
if
it.
a Cub Scout is out there,
Yeah.
someone may be out there for 2 or 3 hours. Some of them may have other obligations. They're only out there for 1 hour. So you get more credit the longer time you spend out there. That way it doesn't disadvantage a scout that works a slower shift with one that works a busy shift. And we've got a lot of folks in the comments sharing different ideas for fundraising projects. They do keep those coming. Anthony and I might not address every single one of those, like he said, but definitely appreciate those ideas coming. Anthony, we've talked about, establishing a goal. Do you need a fundraiser? What is it for? We've talked about how you split it up, things like that. Talked about location. What else do we need to talk about?
I shop around town, and during the fall and during the spring, I see lots of fundraisers, right? I see kids, especially by our grocery store that we shop at. And I'm always, I'm a little disappointed at times that it's obvious that no one spent time with the kids who are selling to train them on how to sell, right? And this is a great opportunity to teach some very important life skills to your Cub Scouts, which is looking people in the eye and making an ask and saying thank you and being polite. We made sure that our Cub Scouts, when they asked if, our ask was not, do you want to buy something, right? That's part of training. Never ask someone if they want to buy something. No one wants to buy anything, but ask them if will you be willing to support my Cub Scout program, right? Will you be willing to support me in my scouting experience, right? That's a much more powerful draw than it is buying something. And so asking them to support the mission, the program, that individual scout, that's a training technique. And then if someone says no, what does a scout do? Train them to say, thank you, have a great day, right? And sincerely, not, that really helps show that we're living by the values that we claim to have, being friendly and courteous and kind. So making sure that those types of things are addressed, that it's orderly, right? Again, we talked about the kind of that rotation of if you're doing it in front of a store and you've got a couple of kids, that you don't have them swarming one person at a time, but rather it's orderly, it's one person at a time. Have a process where your younger scouts, they may make the ask and there's an adult that's maybe a step away behind them. And as you can see, that customer is willing to say yes, then that handoff happens and the adult can take care of the transaction. So again, thinking it through a little bit and training those Cub Scouts of how to ask, that they're asking to support scouting. They're not asking people to buy something, and being courteous throughout the whole experience. That's what people are looking for. And we talked about this earlier. I would tell my kids that people are in the parking lot. They drive through the parking lot. They find a space, and they walk up to the store. That whole time, when they drive in the parking lot, they're parking in and they're walking up, they're watching you. There's no breaks here, right? So no kids on phones, no, messing around. We got to, even if no one's walking out that door, you still need to be on your best behavior because you don't know who's watching. And that makes all the difference in the world of someone deciding whether or not they're going to support scouting or not. So that's one thing to consider. That's a storefront. We also want to make sure you train your scouts on how to do door-to-door, right? The door-to-door sales are very powerful if you're selling in your own neighborhood. Again, high relationship, right? If there's a high relationship and you're known in the neighborhood and you know those neighbors and they know your child and they know your scout, then the more successful you're going to be. And that's learning and making sure scouts know not to go by themselves, that they don't go inside the house. And the best method is to have the actual product there. So then you have this, what's called show and deliver. So it's right there and they can buy the product and you end the transition. transaction right there. It's another step and it's another layer. If you take an order and then you have to come back and fulfill that order, you got to, find a date and time when that person's going to be home again and getting it delivered. It's a method that works, but it's also another layer to factor into your to your sales campaign, no matter what you're selling. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of tying back into what we talked about first, what is the purpose of the fundraiser? Rob points out that his Cub Scouts are trained to say, would you like to help a scout get to summer camp, which sounds a lot better than, would you like to add to our general fund that we might use for who knows what down the road, right? And my personal observation, Anthony, you said something that kind of struck me. When someone is interested in buying something, they want Cub Scouts, the kids, to look them in the eye. They want it, and they might even ask them some questions. What's the money for? They might ask them, what do you like about Cub Scouts? What do you do? What are you going to do? And they don't want the dad. I've been in that situation where you're standing back and you have the urge to step in and answer, but they don't want the parents to answer. They want the kids to answer. And it's not a test. They just want to say, are they going to be polite? Are they going to be respectful? Right? Are they going to say, yeah, it's for camping supplies, or help send me to camp? That goes a long way, I think, into making that. If they can look them in the eye, explain to them, really want to go camping this summer, this would go a long way toward making that happen. That could be the difference right there in a sale or no sale. Then when it comes time to hand over the credit card, maybe at that point you do go to a parent or something like that.
And there's nothing wrong with practicing that. It's not insincere, right? If the Cub Scout, if you ask the Cub Scout before you go out and sell, say, hey, if someone asked you what you liked about Cub Scouting, what's your favorite thing about Cub Scouting, what would you say, right? And then help coach them a little bit on maybe if they aren't expressing themselves in a manner that is clear, maybe coach them a little bit on how they can wordsmith what they're saying, but it's still sincere. It's them. It's nothing's wrong with practicing that and having that refined, because that's very impressive. If you asked a first grader and you said, what do you like about Cub Scouting? And they said, well, you know what? I love going camping, and we went fishing last week, and it gives me a chance to do things I've never done before. Wow. Right? That's compared to, asking a first grader, what do you like about school?
And you never know what a young person's going to say if they're not prepared for something like that, right? You never know what kind of answer you're going to get. So good idea to run that past them for sure. Again, a lot of good ideas in the comments. We've got just a few more minutes. Anthony, anything else we need to share about fundraising? What are our final thoughts? What do we want to make sure our viewers know about spring fundraising?
Yeah, we talked a lot about if you're doing a location sale, and we hit a little bit on door-to-door. Just one more thing to consider if you're doing a sale that is a door-to-door type of product or sale, is to canvas neighborhoods and set up a time where everyone's meeting together and you're taking this side of the street and you're taking this side of the street and you kind of are canvassing. That really is helpful in two ways. One, you're hitting a neighborhood that matches the product, right? So we talked about that, knowing your market. So you're hitting the right market. But then also what makes it really easy is if you are doing a take order type of sale, you know that you're in this concentrated area to go and deliver that product when it comes in. And so that makes it really easy compared to, kind of having each kid do their own neighborhood. And if you're in a rural area, that might be miles and miles apart from each. And so you might have one sale here and one sale there. And it makes delivery a little bit more complicated, where you can almost do a delivery as a unit, as a den, as a pack, compared to having each individual deliver their product to their sales. That's something to consider as well as an option of how you conduct a door-to-door and administer that. Again, there's no silver bullet here other than the method that you and your families have agreed on that say, yes, this works for us and we're committed to this process. That's the one that works the best.
Anthony, I'd be curious as before we let you go, whatever Cub Scout units choose to do for fundraising, it's up to that unit, obviously, as long as they're following the BSA fundraising rules. youth protection policies, all that good stuff like that, guide to safe scouting, all the stuff that we know people are following anyway. But when it comes to door versus, setting up outside of a shop, my personal experience, I would love to know what our viewers think. We almost always did. If I think back, we almost always set up in front of a storefront because I felt like maybe that was easier to plan as a leader. That was just our decision. But I'm curious, Anthony, what your experience was like or what you've heard from the field. What do people do? Do you think is it kind of a mix of both? What kind of feedback do you get?
Again, I think it goes back to what people are. If you believe that this is what works and you're committed to it, then you make it work, right? Mm-hmm. No system is perfect, and so you are willing to forgive the imperfections of the system that you prefer. Mm-hmm. But in this case, personally, we were doing popcorn sales in the fall, which is very common, which is a high dollar item. Mm-hmm. So we know that when you look at a per hour sale rate, going door to door with the product to sell in a neighborhood, you make more money per hour. Mm-hmm. And you do that, and it goes back to that first note that I talked about, high dollar, high relationship, right? I'm selling in the neighborhood. I know these people, they know my son or they know my daughter, and they're willing to support someone they know with a high dollar item. But when we did a spring fundraiser, our product was a camp card and it sold for $5. And that was all about volume and traffic. I'm like, get me in front. Let's get in front of stores that have lots of traffic on the weekends, that have the consumer that we're looking for. We like to go to a store that generally people who are homeowners are shopping at. That's a little tip. So we again know our market of who is more than likely going to purchase and support scouting. We want to be in that neighborhood, even if it's not our own neighborhood, that we want to be in that neighborhood. And we wanted high traffic, high volume for that sale. So we treated each one uniquely because that one size doesn't fit all. So I guess that's a key thing. And you can't compare the two. You can't compare a high dollar product sale item with the low dollar product sale item. They're because they're really, you have to treat them differently if you want to be successful with them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A lot of spirited comments and debate going on about selling snacks for fundraisers, things like that. We appreciate all the comments. You guys are doing a good job. Jeremy, I want to share his comment. He says they do both. They set up a sales site, and they also allows their scouts to take and do wagon sales, as you said, take the product around through your neighborhood. Jeremy, if that works for you guys, I think that is great.
Right.
And Rob points out a great comment to sort of leave everybody with. If your unit money earning fill out the BSA unit money earning application form, if it's not a council-run fundraiser, that's a great checklist just to kind of takes you through the process to make sure you're doing it the right way. Of course, everybody's doing it the right way. If you're watching this show, we know that, but it's a good.
No, I think you're right. The key highlights is on that form. It tells you the rules, and the big rules are simply if it's not a council-supported fundraiser, you may not wear the BSA uniform. You can wear your pack or troop T-shirt. You wear a unit T-shirt, and you can't ask for direct contributions. So you can't just say, we need $5, right? Or give us $10. And you can't do not an auction. You can't do something that doesn't have value for that transaction. So there has to be value for that dollar that someone's purchasing, not a chance to get something. Right. So raffles are out and those types of things. To me, those are like the three big rules that are on the unit money run application. And then also, for more information, if you like this topic, if you want to learn a bit more, we've covered this in the past, right? We've done a couple of episodes in the past about this. On April 8th, you can go to thescoutingmagazine.org, Cub Chat Live. You can look up, it was called The Dollars and Cents of Cub Scouts. And that had to do with budgeting and financing, which fundraising is part of that budget process. And then in September 17th, 2021, we did fun and fundraising, and we talked about fundraising there too. I think we talked mostly about fall fundraisers at that time as well. So,
and this episode will soon join those others in our archives. You can go through and scroll through tons and tons of topics. I want to real quick, Anthony, Newville, Cub Scout Pack 174. I think this is correct, but maybe you can confirm. You mentioned donations. You can't ask for donations, but you can accept them. If someone says, well, I just want to give you $10.
Yep. That's
okay.
That happened to us. Like, and we had, my son we were selling camp cards, and this guy came out and started talking to Joshua. And then before he left, he handed him $100 bill. Right. And Josh was like, what would you like to have? And he's like, that's all that's all. I don't need anything. Right. That's fine. But Joshua can't go up there and say, will you give us $100?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you can't conduct a fundraiser, that's just, there's no transaction. There has to be value to that transaction.
If you have any more questions about fundraisers and what might be okay and what might not be okay, I encourage everybody to look at the document that Rob linked to. He linked to the fundraising application. You will find your answers there. Anthony, good show. Fundraising, part of the Cub Scout program. Not only is it practical to pay for summer camp, whatever else you need, good experience for scouts, good learning experiences for young people. Like you say, some people are going to say no. And quite frankly, some people might be bothered and might just, walk past you. It's a good learning experience to say, thank you, have a good day. No matter what they say to you, we say, thank you, have a good day. Thanks for joining us, Anthony. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, you were talking about, you never know what kids are going to say.
Yes.
And I didn't train my son to say this when we were selling one year. He just came up with it himself, and then that became part of our training process. So we were selling camp cards for $5, and someone said, "Do you have change for 20?" And he goes, "Well, why don't you just buy 4?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can use those.
The guy was laughing so hard. He's like, "Yeah, okay, you got me." So
perfect. Love it. Anthony, good show today. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend. We will be back here next Friday for another episode of Cub Chat Live. Good job, Anthony. Thank you, everybody.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. See you guys.